Welcome to our work session dated this Monday, the 26th of February. We're a full quorum today with Commissioner Bolos seated to my right and Commissioner Froer seated to my left. We have our first item on this public meeting, which is a public meeting, not a public hearing, so no public comments will be taken. But our first item on our agenda today is a discussion for approval of minutes for the commission work session held on February 5th, 2024. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those work session meeting minutes have passed. Well, now I'll entertain a motion for closed session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property.
Motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. It's a roll call vote to go into closed session because we do everything here by the book. Commissioner Bolos, Commissioner Froer,
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey, aye. We're now going into closed session. Thank you.
The man a few.
Yeah, as Sharon gets up and the trash is, you're gonna be 35
I
minutes.
said
Then.
I left you 21 minutes.
Oh, I thought you said 21 minutes to get to our work session.
I said I left you 21 minutes.
Oh,
I took 45
So
seconds.
did you give a 30-minute speech?
Jared
I
and
missed
Jane
it.
even said Sharon did such a nice job. Gosh, she said nicely.
Well, Kathy informed me while I was sitting there eating. Oh, by the way, you're right here on the program.
Oh, yeah.
I think she sent me a text, but I wasn't reading anything.
Okay, we've got the discussion regarding the URS exemption and for eternal policy. Stephanie Ebert, Scott Park, and Emily Wild. Because they're not here right now, commissioners, I'll entertain a motion to saunter for 10 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we're gonna saunter for 10. We're on item number 3, which is a discussion regarding the URS exemption for internal auditor position. Ms. Ebert, Scott Park, Ms. Wild, we've got Mr. Crockett in here. Ms. Ebert, go ahead, please.
Right, so Weaver County has the option to designate a certain number of positions from the URS system, Utah Retirement System. And there is a statute that allows that. It's 4913-203. I've included that in what I just handed to you. And as long as the positions that we have fit certain criteria, which we have found they have to be at will or elected officials can fall into those categories. And as long as we have a list of those positions that we've decided to call exempt eligible, employees can choose if they're in one of those positions to be exempted from the Utah retirement systems. So we have our internal auditor that we just hired that is interested in this exemption. And so we just wanted to make sure that we couldn't find, we have a current list, of those individuals in the county that have opted to exempt themselves from the Utah retirement systems, and that's on the back page. But we wanted to make sure that we were following the statute and had that list available for those positions that we want to list as exempt eligible.
Questions, commissioners?
So we set the criteria, like I said in the statute, they have to be at will or elected officials. And so we've enhanced that a little bit and set the criteria forth on this front page where we've listed them as at will, salaried, and then the positions that meet the following assignment category that we've selected, which are elected officials, chief deputies, department directors, and division directors.
This is just the list of those who are eligible. Doesn't mean they've actually taken advantage of it.
Correct.
On the back page,
Got it,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
We're limited to 50 by statute. We can only have 50 positions that are eligible to be exempted. So this keeps us under that.
I think that list is 44 positions.
Huh,
So is everybody here on URS?
Everybody except for the 4 people on the back page.
very back page, page 4.
So I didn't think I was. Yeah,
So yeah, you are listed as exempt eligible, which
Right.
means that you don't pay into the Utah retirement system.
right.
So as long as they're on that list, and then the employee actually has to designate that they want to be listed as exempt eligible and submit that to
There you
yours.
go.
Makes sense.
Questions, Commissioner Bolos?
So it's up to the employee.
Yes,
Got it.
as long as they fit the criteria, then it's up to the employee whether they want to take advantage of that or not.
No questions, comments? Commissioner
No,
Farrar?
thank you.
Okay. I don't think you
Can
have
I
any
just get
issues here.
two of you to sign that just says that you're good with that?
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have today.
Wow, that's really nice. Thank
Great.
you so much. Okay,
Thanks.
great. We're gonna move on then, if that's okay. We're gonna move on with the discussion on the tuition reimbursement, the leave policy, the telecommuting policy, the internship policy, and the attendance policy. Ms. Wild,
We got a lot of policies to talk.
we got
Yeah,
policies.
we've got some few policies, so I've got a copy if you, here, if you would like to kind of,
These in our email.
these were your email, if you would
Okay,
like to see.
I mean, you don't need to just you.
No, unless you want to stay, no. Chris, you've got your
Mark,
copy.
thank you.
So we have just made a couple changes to some policies. So the first policy, the telecommuting policy, so that was originally embedded in the attendance policy, and we created it as a standalone policy, and then made it a couple recommendations to the policy. So we added that telecommuting arrangements are made on a case-by-case basis. We have a telecommuting form that anybody who is going to participate in telecommuting needs to sign.
Is that form new? I saw that attachment.
That form is not new. We used this form when COVID started.
Right.
And we thought we would bring it back and adopt it as part of the process for telecommuting moving forward. And this just kind of goes over, you know, like responsibility, what the county does and does not, you know, pay for, you know, that they still need to keep safe equipment, secure computers, things like that. And then we also added that employees, if they are telecommuting, they also need to be accessible by phone, email, video, conference, you know, whatever their means of communication is during the agreed upon work schedule. And that if they are unable to connect to do their work, then they either need to report to the work location or use time off using the leave policy. So we added that.
Where, tell me that line item.
So that is line item.
Thanks.
3.8.
Okay,
Yes,
so it's addressing connection issues, not.
yes, connect, yeah, so if they
like-
connect.
Like equipment issues.
Yes, yep, so if they can't get into the VPN, their
Yes.
internet is down at
Got it.
home, all of that, then they either need to report into work or take time off, according to the leave.
Okay, got it.
And then telecommuting can be terminated at any time for any reason based on, you know, the department director's choice. So that's the changes to the telecommuting policy.
Here it is right here.
Do you think departments should create their own policy, like within, like, say, the attorney's office or the assessor's office? So that's a standard application as to how working from home or telecommuting works? I mean, we have the general policy.
We have a general policy. They can, yeah.
Why would they want to do that?
So court coverage,
Oh.
making sure, like, if you only want certain days to have, people working from home because you need coverage on, you know, Mondays or Fridays. Something like that. It's department specific needs.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we typically have that with, you know, in most of our other policies, a lot of times it says the department head, you know, should have, you know, a policy, like with our internship policy.
Well, I wonder if it
It
would
goes-
help with, you know, just making sure that it's equitable and fair. That if if two employees want to take advantage of it, that they have the opportunity to, and so it's not just like a favoritism type thing. For certain employees to be able to work from home.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll need to add that to this then. Cause I don't think this overall policy recommends or says you need to have your own department policy.
So you would add that item to this general policy
Yes,
as an option for different departments to have a requirement?
I think maybe just an option.
Okay, tell me one more time, Chris. So I understand why we want that.
So in the attorney's office, there's certain days where we have to have people here for screening and we have to have a minimum amount of staff. And so if we have court, we want to make sure that not too many people are working from home. And so if we have a policy, just outlines what our expectations are. For example, with civil, I actually find working from home telecommuting to be very beneficial. It's when my attorneys can catch up on some things, but I always want to have a minimum of 3 attorneys in the office at any given time. So that means 2 can work from home. I like to have it just be 1 day a week, instead of multiple days. So it just provides some predictability and consistency. So, but I think if it's just an option for the departments to implement more specific rules to fit their particular requirements. And there might be some departments who they need everybody here,
Right.
and they're just not going to allow it. Or very limited.
So does that need to be part of this general policy that some department heads may opt to not allow it? Does
I
that need
think
to be?
Wording similar
I
to
think
that?
it's implied in here in that the department can take it away at any time.
Okay,
Um,
I apologize. I've only skimmed these because I got them last week, so when I was not engaged. But yeah, I saw that part. Okay, I just want to make sure that it's addressed so that if a department chooses not to,
but,
if a department chooses not to, and another one's saying, well, we'll allow it, and we have these more specific things, is there gonna be an issue where two different departments are saying, well, how come they get that option?
they could, but they're, the way I'd respond to that is that they're different job functions.
Right, sure, and I see that.
Yeah, but there is that possibility that one department could give more
Okay.
flexibility
Okay.
than another.
Now I'm okay with that wording.
I mean, it does say, it's management approval and it's
Yeah.
not appropriate for every job at the
Right.
county.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one concern that we had and why we wanted a particular policy in the attorney's office is that there were some concerns about people wanting to just work from home on Fridays. And it's like, no, it's not, we don't want to be treated like an extra vacation day, even though they're supposed to be working, but so we made it so like Tuesday through Thursday, and maybe once a week. So, yeah, those were just our particular needs.
Any other questions, Commissioner?
I don't think
Bowles?
so, and I do think there are advantages for telecommuting. It gives being away from the office gives employees such an opportunity to catch up without interruption. At least that's my experience.
Yeah, and I will call my employees every time they're working from home, and as long as they answer the phone and I can get a hold of them right away, it's been a good thing. So it's a balancing type thing.
Thank you. Commissioner Faur?
Well, I think you're heading the right direction. I've always had concerns about telecommuting. I've heard some discussion from other departments that look at the commission office and say, why, do we have so many people telecommuting, on basically the entire week? And that's when I asked Emily to take a look at it. But I think that's something we should address internally for the commission office, because again, I think, our busiest days, at least what I see up here, Monday and Tuesday is important to have people here. And it's not convenient for me to have to call somebody at their home to say, hey, I need this letter typed up, or will you cut? There's certain days that we need people here. I mean, I just look at my real estate office and there's certain days
Sure.
that if you're not here, my opinion was, you're not at work, so go find another job. And that might be a little hard, but you need boots on the ground. Steal from Broncos, but anyway. So I just think, I'm not opposed to telecommuting, but I think we have to have some control over it, right? And maybe you got control over it, but I don't. I mean, it seems like some days there's people here, some days they're not. I would just like to have a calendar that says, look, here's the day, here's the days I can expect you in, here's the day. That's all I would like to see.
I think we can do that because my understanding is their telecommuting days are Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So they are here on the two busiest days. But having our own policy within our department might be helpful so that we understand the calendar and.
Well, I guess that's where I'm headed. I would just like to have our own for the commission office, and then if somebody hits me up on it, and I said, look, here's our policy. And I didn't know it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And they each take one day. So and if that's the policy, okay.
I'm
good with it.
I think that's great. I think what would be good is when we have our meeting after our staff meeting with the commissioners, Christie, you're gonna either hear this now or you're gonna hear this on the notes when you do the minutes.
Yeah.
But I'd like you to make sure that Shelley puts that on our next staff meeting agenda so we can just flush this out and we can know, there'll be special circumstances, but this is something that I think within our office that we put on our agenda in our staff meeting, and we'll do that.
Yeah, and that's all I'm after. I just like to know a little consistency. So I'm not surprised when I come in and expect something to be done and it doesn't get done.
Fair.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Fair.
I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it, but
Well,
Well,
and then,
when we
I think
roll
it's
this
good.
out,
it's a
let's,
good business practice.
yeah. When we
Fair.
roll it out, or when we adopt it, let the, directors know that they have that option.
Yeah.
You know, that if there's something specific to their department that they want to address, and maybe their department is no telecommuting, we need you here. I mean, the front counter people, but those departments, they
Right.
can't telecommute.
Right.
So, you know,
Yeah.
just let them understand that they can be more specific. They can say this isn't happening in our department, so that they don't feel like they have to.
We're
Yeah.
thinking, oh, go ahead, please, Emily.
oh, I was just gonna say on this telecommuting form too, they have to designate their schedule. If it's
Yeah.
gonna be one day a week and what day of week that
Mhm.
is.
Yeah.
And then their, you know, where it is and their contact information.
That's
I mean,
great.
So that's, yeah, to me, that solves a lot of the
Yeah,
problem.
sure.
Okay.
I just don't
super.
want it to be a bunch of guesswork. Let's find out.
Yeah,
And I think Chris brings up a good point. With his office, you know, you've gotta have 3 attorneys there at any one time
And
and
have anyone be able to show up at the attorney's office and to speak to someone in
Yeah.
person at any given time.
yeah.
All right,
Okay.
let's go move on. The human resource policy 2-500.
So this is the attendance policy. This is just removing the telecommuting portion because we created it as its own standalone. So there are no additional changes
Got it.
with that.
Any questions, commissioners?
hold on a second.
No,
Pretty self-explanatory.
Hold on.
I'll hold on for a moment. Stand by.
I'm
I'm
standing
looking at the
by.
little red lines on the digital
Great,
copy.
that's great.
Work week,
I love it. That's one of the things I think is awesome about you. You're good at this.
listen.
You're good.
My homework when I was on
No,
vacation, that's why.
I'm glad you did.
On
Yeah.
item 3A2,
3-8.
382.
is there any change there?
Could you make it even smaller?
Probably could, so let's not ask.
Sorry, it is pretty small. There were no changes except for removing a space and putting 2 and 3 instead of, but there were no actual changes.
Okay. And then telecommuting, I see that. Okay. I just had to hit the red line and now I can see it all. Okay,
A question we might wanna ask our workers' comp provider, and I've always been hesitant to ask this question, is what if they get hurt while they're home?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Then we're still liable for workers' comp. So if they while working, but if they're in their kitchen or something, they're not working, then we're not. But if they were to, I don't know, I mean, trip on a cord or, you know,
drop their
trip over
laptop
their
on their foot.
or something, we would be, yes, we would be, which is part of, that telecommuting agreement. Kind of tells you what,
Does it have them keeping their place clean and, yeah.
That's a good point.
Does our workers' comp require a list of employees or job descriptions of those who are allowed to work remotely? Or anything, or like, does it affect our premiums at all?
well, I don't think working from home affects our premiums, but obviously the more employees we have, the more people that get hurt, that's what affects
Right.
our premiums.
So there's nothing working remotely really does to our policy.
No,
Okay,
no,
okay.
so,
Do we, excuse me, do we have any liability? Let's say that somebody comes and visits that employee and then they're hurt because they're working at home. Do we have liability from that perspective?
I don't think
I
so.
wouldn't think so. It's probably gonna be a fact-intensive inquiry, but there's gonna be a separation of, okay,
Okay.
you were working here, like you had a visitor come that's not working, cause this, I've always been worried about this, especially since COVID, but so many people are working from home
Yeah.
that I don't think it could just be this huge liability.
No.
There's gonna be some implications to it, but they do need to keep their working environment clean,
Clean, safe.
safe.
But we're not gonna check or monitor that.
No.
No, and, the liability, I guess, would come in as if, you know, someone that was working from home left their computer open and available and somebody came in
Yeah.
and got into it and did something or stole information, the county would be,
Why can't we put, going back to that first policy then, why can't we put the liability, if the employee works from home, the liability on them for home?
So I think the way we shift that is how the policy is written right now is that we put obligations on the employee to make sure that they abide by our internet use policy, safeguards that they're using their VPNs, because if they don't, then it's gonna remove the liability. from
Right.
us. Yeah. So making sure that they're subject to any existing policies and standards.
Okay.
is what's gonna be
so
right.
it
I
says employee agrees to protect like materials from unauthorized or accidental use. So right there, if they are signing this form,
They're agreeing with
then they're agreeing that they're going to keep, you know, I mean, there's some accountability on them that they have to.
I wanna be careful, cause no good
Unauthorized.
deed goes unpunished.
Well, you saw Quinn's email about the cyber attacks we had
Yeah.
last week. I mean, all it takes is for somebody to walk out of their room,
Walk away,
office,
yeah.
et cetera. You know, a kid or whoever walks in and
Yeah.
jumps on a website and there you go. So I think that's a real concern. So, I mean, again, I think we're protected, but again, the county, you know, we could be held up for ransom for a lot of money.
Would you like us, we were planning on presenting this to the department head, meeting, these policies and maybe just say something like, this is not the rule, this is not just the standard, this is more of like an exception, the telecommuting.
Yeah,
It's not going to be
Yeah,
something that's
yeah.
widely available, but
That's-
it's like a case by case basis.
Please.
Like the policy.
yeah, this
Please.
isn't COVID.
Yeah.
This
Get on
is-
that agenda for that, will you?
This
Do
is
that.
special. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, okay.
And I think they need
You
to
good with
understand
that?
that.
Yeah.
This,
Yeah.
the liability issue, you know, goes back on them. And again, I don't know if there's any teeth in it, but I just worry at night on all these counties and cities are getting hacked and it's
Yeah.
pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah, okay. Let's keep going. So you've got the next one's the leave policy.
So the leave policy, and this is under the parental leave. So it is, and we just added a 7 to that. So with parental leave, allow them to produce not just a medical certification if there's a birth or adoption, but also like a birth certificate or court document verifying the adoption. And we added this because FMLA, so technically parental leave falls under FMLA, and it states that we have to allow them to provide like a birth certificate
right.
instead of a medical certification for parental leave. So
Just following the federal,
just following the federal law by adding
Sometimes you
that
gotta do that.
just in
paragraph.
case you want to know, in case you're, anyway.
I was wondering about that.
Mr. Bullis, questions on that one?
Yeah,
Okay, got a question.
it's in number 3, item I. Sick leave may not be transferred from one employee to another. Am I in the right one? Are we talking about the right one?
You're in
Leave
the right
practices?
policy,
Okay.
yes. But the parental leave is
Yeah.
I.
3I, I'm just curious about that, if it's ever been allowed and, sick leave being transferred. And the
No,
reason I asked that is because we had an employee in West Haven once who was a donor for a relative. Who didn't have enough leave and employees donated their leave to him so that he could donate.
so
Oh,
we have not allowed that, and it has Scott Park, he probably should have stayed, he could answer this probably better than I can, but there is some financial ramifications with that because the sick leave is considered wages, and so it's not as simple as just gifting your leave to somebody else because there are
because
financial.
it's attached to their hourly rate.
Yeah, so,
Okay. I was just curious if it's ever been a part of the county's policy or not, and honestly, I don't think it was even addressed in our policy at the time we allowed it. It was just something that we we allowed employees to do so that he could take off the time he needed. It was like a month,
Yeah.
so, okay.
Yeah, we
Just
haven't
curious.
allowed that, I mean, we have, short-term disability if an employee, is facing a situation, if they've elected short-term disability. I mean, FMLA covers 12 weeks at their regular rate, so, and then we do have some leeway with unpaid leave. I mean, it's unpaid. but-
Mhm. Okay,
Okay. Super. Commissioner Farrar?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, let's keep moving on then.
Okay, so the next one is the tuition reimbursement policy, 6-100. And we just clarified the IRS limit. So the IRS limit is 5,250. And so we changed the wording to clarify that that is the maximum that they can have per year, because if they go over that, then they have to claim that as income. And in addition to that, and that also includes if they have student loan assistance and tuition reimbursement.
So those
anyone
things
ever
are
even come
collected.
close to that?
Yes,
Really?
actually, and this is one reason why we.
Really?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, there's some attorneys that have several $100,000 in debt.
Yeah,
But come close to. Wait a minute, hold
It's a
on, let
yearly
me read
amount,
this,
isn't it?
let me,
it's a
let me
yearly
read it
amount.
then.
Mhm.
Up to the IRS, does the IRS limit? What is the IRS limit? Of
5,250.
What's that limit? A limit of what can be reimbursed by
Uh-huh,
the
for
employee?
education expenses.
That's my question. Have we reimbursed any employee $5,000 a year?
We had a couple people last year who submitted a combined total of more than that. And so, which is why a second piece of this policy is that we want the reimbursement forms to come through our office first, to ensure the annual limits, because last year we had two individuals, one from the sheriff's office, one from the library, that submitted more than that limit. And so we had to add that additional amount as income to their end of year. And so, because they were
Hmm.
submitting one semester at a time,
Right.
one semester
Right.
didn't equal the limit, but overall annually, it can't be more than that limit.
Okay,
And so that's why we clarified the policy, because also somebody technically can be eligible for the student loan assistance and tuition reimbursement. But again, that total cannot be more than the 5,250 annually. With both of those combined, and so that's what this clarification on the
Okay.
policy is. And then also it has to go through our office. We vet and make sure that the annual limits are adhered to.
okay.
Question if I might, Mr. Chair.
Please.
So remind me, I know I went through this with Sarah Swan a couple years ago. So do we have any requirements up front from day one? Can they apply for the tuition reimbursement, or is there like a longevity? Do we have?
There
I
is.
mean,
You have to be tenured for
Yeah.
so many months or something.
Yes, and it has to be for the tuition reimbursement. It has to be for, I think it's a graduate level degree. No, that's the student loan here. Now I'm gonna get myself mixed up here. You have to have been a full-time, worked with the county for at least 6 months. And then they basically submit it on a first come, first served basis. So there's a budget set aside. So
Yeah.
when that budget is out, then it's out. So it's kind of first come, first served.
Yeah, and I guess that was my question is, are we making that clear to people so that, I can see a situation where somebody working next to us, got the tuition, they come running up and they don't get it. Now, we're the bad guys.
So we send out an email. So we sent this out end of November, beginning of December to everybody, said, okay, here's the window that you
Okay.
can submit and apply for that. We take it on a first come, first serve. And so we give them a time frame. Those can apply, they apply, and then that's who gets it for the year. And we open it up every year.
So, question if I
Please.
might again, I wonder, have we looked at possibly saying, we've got X number of dollars, we have in the budget, right? What if we were to say, look, we've got X number of dollars, we'll take in the applications and then divide that by the number of applications. So instead of the first person getting 5,250, maybe everybody gets 4,000. I don't know, is that, you know what I'm saying? We could,
That's-
I'd like to cover more people than less. And I could see a potential, you know, conflict where somebody gets 5,250, the funds go out and now
We're done.
they don't get it.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, I will find out
I
and
don't-
see how many people get turned away.
yeah,
That's my.
really, that's the question. Are people applying and the money's gone? If it's not, then we're good.
That's my question. I just wondered if we run out of money each year and there are people who are rejected because there could be a timing issue depending on where you're attending college.
Yeah,
You know, right? If one person gets their grades released on December
Yeah,
4th, they
right.
hurry and apply for reimbursement. And then the other one gets their grades released on December 14th, the money's gone. I mean, I used to have a window
yeah.
where if you apply during this window, you'll be considered. And,
I like that.
you know, I did, people are online on school, they're
Yeah.
all different end of semester dates.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
So
I
if
just
we're
like
not
to know-
running out of money, then okay, but if we're running out of money and turning people away,
Yeah.
might be more fair to have a window.
I like that idea.
And I think really we should base that on the budget. At some point, you know, whatever our dollar amount is based upon the number of applications. And if we could do that at 5,250 and we're covering everybody, great.
Mhm.
If we can't, then I think we gotta look at a revision.
Uh-huh.
okay.
The loan assistance policy is, in my opinion, one of the best policies that's ever been passed here at the county.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's keeping our attorneys here, because it's being used in conjunction with loan forgiveness. Because if you work 10 years in public service, no matter what your loan amount is, the federal government will forgive it. So it
Yeah.
is such a great retention.
Well, that's your buddy,
Which one?
Joseph.
Good friend. Well, the governor likes him too now.
Any other questions, Commissioner Bolos?
No,
Mr.
thank you.
Faur? Great, I would like to move on now to internships.
Okay, so this is a newly created policy, and the idea behind this is to standardize
Yeah.
internships and also
I like this.
the record keeping of student interns, because as we find out, again, we still have some liability with workers' comp for interns. And everybody's kind of doing it different, right? You've got some that are paid, some that are unpaid. And so it standardizes and makes sure that it's fair for every department within the county. So, I worked with, Cortland and Chris. So there are situations where we would have unpaid internships if the student receives qualified academic credit for the semester. So the internship has to be within the, semester courses. And then if it's not for academic credit, then it's a paid internship. And they're basically considered temporary part-time employees. So we have to process them as employees because we have to pay payroll taxes. So we had some issues with some people not processing them as employees and then trying to pay them a stipend and wanting to do a 1099. So this, I think, standardizes it. And then also, because we are liable for workers' comp
Right.
with interns, then the idea is that all of the record keeping has to be housed in HR, just like employees. So we get the record, the application of the intern, they have to sign like our workers' comp policy. They're still subject to sexual harassment, like they can't be harassed or they can't harass others. So they have to sign that policy. So we have the record of all of the interns.
I like this. Any questions, Commissioner Bolos?
No.
Commissioner Faur?
No, this is great. We needed this a while ago. We had a couple of problems.
It doesn't
Children,
say
well,
it doesn't
take
say anything about
responsibility for it.
pay. Is that rate just set based upon the position
And the budget, yeah, so I think the department, based on the, if they're doing an internship for, nurses or, obviously that's gonna be different than if, the attorney's office is doing an internship or IT. So it's kind of based on position and what they have designated as their budget, so as long as it's, at least meets the minimum wage.
Looks good.
We may get some pushback from departments regarding having to pay interns who aren't getting academic credit. And there's a test that the federal government does to determine whether someone's a volunteer or actually unemployed. And it's so convoluted. It's like a 7-step test that we just, I think it was years ago, made the decision that we're just going to pay them.
Yes.
It's just, it's much easier.
I think for the history, this is the good thing to do, and I'm glad that it standardizes it, so makes it good.
And listen, they're starving students anyway, you can pay them a little bit,
Right.
right?
But there are situations where there are unpaid internships,
Sure.
Chris.
They're getting credit.
Well, and that's it. We
If they're getting
heavily rely on interns, but they are receiving college credit towards their graduation.
Yeah,
That'd
I
be
did
the
that.
unpaid variety.
I was
Yeah.
so worried. I
You're
called
right.
Emily, I was like,
Yeah.
don't take away our interns as far as ones that we get from the law.
Do you have them all the
schools.
time?
All-
Wow.
Well, this is good.
Yeah.
And are you gonna talk to the directors about this? This is
Yes,
a new policy, right?
this is a new policy, and then
like
next week, I'm gonna get on your agenda again, we have a volunteer policy as well.
Oh,
And so,
volunteer, that's in your.
Yeah,
in
volunteer.
the department head next week, extended department head, we wanna review the internship and the volunteer.
Well, I think timing's
policy.
good, because the legislature will be done, so that's good timing.
Well, with volunteers and interns, I think the way that we sell it to the departments is that to have HR process all of the applications, because we have to have a master list. That is where you get the protection under government immunity, and that's
Right.
where you're gonna make sure that your interns and volunteers have workers' comp. Otherwise, they don't have it.
Right.
So to have one central location to process all of that. And most departments do, but there are some who do not even ever tell us that they have interns or volunteers.
Okay, well, this will be good. You're gonna present these at the meeting there.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Tuesday morning.
Uh-huh,
Yep.
well,
Yeah.
uh-huh, that's the one.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got it.
I got it.
Okay. Any other things, Miss Wild? You did a nice job with
Thank
these.
you.
Holy mackerel.
I like them.
It's a lot of work,
Oh,
a
I'll
lot of
say,
policies, but
It's good.
keeping
good.
things cleaned up. That's what,
Very
that's.
much needed, my
Yeah.
opinion.
All right, if there's nothing else from any of you,
Just a joke. I saw something about how when everyone starts a new job, all of a sudden their 4 grandparents are alive again. So that they can take off the funeral leave.
I get it. Okay, all right, well, that's good. Appreciate that. That's commissioners, that's fantastic, as we're gonna need to keep moving this bus along. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property.
So moved.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Roll call. Commissioner Faur,
aye.
Commissioner Bolos,
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey votes aye. We're into closed session. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, Emily. Great job.
back out of closed session. And we'll look to see our next presenters coming in if they're here.
Both of the closed sessions right there.
Looks like you get kind of the same group coming in for 6 and 7, close to them.
Pretty much. We're already getting it. Man, I got a million telephone calls on that
On what?
board. Inland board. Save the mosquito.
Yeah, there's some people. A lot of them are from Salt Lake, though.
Well, welcome back. This is the Weber County Commission work session as we continue on this Monday, the 26th of February. We're joined today with this discussion on the Nordic Valley PID, Public Infrastructure Development. We've got Miss Stephanie Russell, John Bond, Scott Parks. We have Miss Stephanie Ebert here and Sean Wilkinson, Brandon Quinney. Charlie is not yet here. We have
Brennan Brown.
Brennan Brown,
Brooke Holt.
Brooke Holt,
Cole.
Cole.
C-O-L-E.
and Rob Behunin.
Correct.
So, with Nordic Valley, Miss Russell, go ahead and lead us in this discussion, and then you can turn the time over as you see fit.
Commissioners, we're here today with Nordic Valley and the Economic Development Finance Committee members to discuss moving forward with the public processes for a public infrastructure district for the Nordic Valley Development Project. They've been working on this project for many years with the county, and we're at a point where we've got the development agreement completed, and we've had the initial part of our PID review process. Their application's been reviewed. Today we're coming to you with a recommendation to continue to move this public infrastructure district creation forward. So I'll let their team kind of take the reins and give you a little bit of background on what they're doing and what they're going to be asking for through a public infrastructure district.
Who's gonna be your speaker?
I can probably lead us,
Okay.
Brennan Brown. I've got hard copies. Do you want us to zoom in to put it on the screen or?
I think it's fine.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, commission just needs to see it.
Okay, I think everyone else has seen all of this before. Do you guys want to?
You've been through.
Yeah.
You made any changes to
No. No, this is all the same information that you guys have seen, just formatted slightly differently. So the first page there just shows the general vicinity of what we're talking about, which is, Nordic Valley, approximately 500, a little over 500 acres. The second, I guess the third slide shows an overview of what Brooke Cole and his team are hoping to do and what they're hoping to achieve. So you can see there's some hotel space, some commercial space, some condos, chalets, employee units, all sort of creating a base at Nordic Valley and some accommodation ability for those that come. There was a study that was done on page 4, just highlighting really quickly the impact to Weaver County from this type of development of building a base at Nordic Valley. You can see there's a pretty significant economic activity as it relates to additional spending. And then you can look on the right-hand side to see the specific fiscal impacts. So between new property tax revenue, sales tax revenue, transient room tax revenue, et cetera, that study was done to project all of that out based on that development plan you saw on the page before.
And that's
So,
for a 25-year period, correct?
yeah, the bottom numbers are over a 25-year period. So the 400 and so next page, Commissioner. Yeah, after the map there. So page number 4. So yeah, that 49 million is the fiscal benefit over the 25-year period. And then the economic impact is, okay, beyond just direct property or sales tax revenue generated from this project, what other knock-on effects does that have across the economy as more people are spending money within the county? It also takes into account new job wages and some of the construction materials. So that's why that number is quite a bit bigger. It's 471 million. The plan is really on page, well, actually, let me pause. Are there any questions about that at all?
No.
All right, so there's
Move forward.
a significant impact. In order to do this, there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built or realigned to handle some of the expected development here. And so this table, what we're trying to do is lay out those infrastructure improvements and categorize them by infrastructure that's more on-site versus infrastructure that's regional in nature and will benefit the entire area, the community as a whole. And so You can see listed on the left-hand column are kind of the infrastructure that's more private in nature or benefits the project specifically. There's a lot of them. There's on-site improvements. There's a lot of improvements to the mountain, to the skier experience. That is estimated to be $75 million. In the column next to that, we're showing, okay, here's some of the regional improvements that are going to be, so there's some roadway improvements, some roundabouts, that will benefit the broader area and the broader region. And then when you kind of look at the bigger numbers in that column, it's really a treatment plant and some, kind of sewer and water improvements that we can talk about more specifically in a little bit if you have questions. But those are the pieces of infrastructure that we would hope that would get paid for by the public infrastructure district, and potentially some tax increment dollars as well. So we tried to divide it out to say these are the regional benefits that will benefit the county and many other people up in that area, versus the on-site infrastructure, which will be borne by the GWC team.
Okay.
And then the last, really, this is probably the last one we want to dive into. How are we going to pay for this? And so you can see the developer funding is, either through equity or debt, is 80 million plus. And then with the public infrastructure district at 5 mils, that's about $28 million of funding. And then tax increment at the county level and then at the other taxing entity levels results in about 15 million of benefit. And so combined, that's how we're proposing from a plan of finance perspective to finance and really realize this full project, and the scope of this. And so that tax increment and PID only funds a portion of what we would call regional benefit and infrastructure that's being built here, but also feel like it's a kind of an appropriate mix of all the uses of funding here.
So the PID and the CRA, the PID takes advantage of the county's policy of a maximum of 5 mils for the project area. And we've also had them scale back their CRA asked to come in compliance with our new policy, which we have not adopted, which is at the 50%. What we do, Brennan, 50?
So we did 15 years.
50 and 15.
Mm-hmm.
So does that match with what we told the folks at the school district that night?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it sure does.
That's important to me.
It is important, and that was something we stressed at the very beginning of this project was we are coming in, we are narrowing this tranche down to match the school and the fire district. And Brennan came back with additional numbers, and that's what you guys are seeing right here are those revised
I want to
numbers.
be notified and present when this is presented
Absolutely.
at the district, school district,
Just
so I
to
could be
clarify,
there to help.
This is
That's
75% for 15 years.
Ours is
The county,
75, not 50.
Not 50.
No, the school
The school
district,
district,
School
I'm
district's
sorry.
50, yeah, but the
Yeah, I
county's
meant to say,
75.
sorry, I meant to say that.
well, they're the
Sorry.
lion's share of
Sorry.
the deal
Yeah.
anyway, you know.
Just because
75 fits within our.
with our general guidelines, and then they came in with the 50 at 15.
Yeah.
Sorry, I meant to say that.
Yeah, okay,
I saw it.
makes sense. Yeah, we created a CRA?
No, we have not done that yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is the proposal. This is what it would look like.
Okay, got it.
So we submitted an application for the PID and have gone through the process to get to this point. We submitted the application for the CRA. And I think the next step there is to adopt a survey area resolution,
Right.
but we're kind of running concurrently on those paths. The PID is a little bit ahead,
Yeah.
but similar timelines.
Okay,
And we like to put the PIDs together in conjunction with the development agreement, which is completed. And then also we don't move the PIDs forward without the ability to show where that infrastructure is, what districts will assume that infrastructure upon completion. So that's probably a good time to talk about that at this point. And then once we've got that solid, we'll move into the CRA process. But we want to make sure you guys feel comfortable creating the PID before we even begin creating the CRA.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so all this infrastructure that's gonna be built with these dollars is public infrastructure, so it will be deeded over to some public entity, whether that's a water district or a sewer district or the county or
So this is
a
a
park
question,
district.
it's a question I have. So okay, it'll be deeded over. I don't think I have any more questions, but I do have a question, but based on where we're headed, that all has to be done before you start your digging, right?
So, well, like if you're.
Those agreements have to be in place.
Yes, those agreements have to be in place, and in fact, they want it in place even
won't
before
create
we.
the PID without them.
Yeah.
Great. That answers the questions.
And they
I have
really,
there.
and they aren't gonna go to the bond market until the PID and the CRA are
Great.
in place.
Okay,
So
so
after the CRAs.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. So we like to get with development agreement, PID, the PID is not created without the district agreements or requiring the districts to provide written agreements before the PID is created. Then while the PID is in the process of being created, after we get to that point, we'll start creating the CRA. And then they can go to bond market.
Questions?
Yeah, so a couple questions. So let's talk about water and sewer districts. As you well know, we've had some ongoing discussions with water and sewer in the valley over the past while. I'm trying to forget how long. Have you got an idea what districts you're gonna be able to put this in?
I do.
Okay,
If you'd like me to go through it, I'd be happy to.
well, yeah, just a general, I think that
That's been a moving
you,
A
deal.
little bit of moving
I
target.
think you're gonna end, I guess, bottom line is you're gonna have to create some new districts.
Well,
Or incorporate into existing.
You're going to what page in your presentation?
not necessarily a page yet, but to answer your question, Commissioner, directly is there is an existing district up there for sewer
Right,
called the Nordic Valley Sewer District.
right.
Now, it is dormant, but it is a district. It was formed and there is a boundary associated.
There is a
with it.
boundary. We saw that map.
Mhm.
Okay.
And it is not in any other district's boundary right today. And so, our proposal is to revive that district.
Okay.
And to fund that district with some of these dollars and some of our own to create the infrastructure necessary to support that district. Okay. That doesn't just serve only this property. It serves some additional property as well, potentially. Doesn't have to, but it can. In your packet, if you're looking at this with me here, if you'll go to
Third to the last page.
the last three pages.
The last
three. Page it looks like this.
I think I've got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe one more, Commissioner there on the end. Maybe one more. There you go. What this is this shows in yellow here in the middle. This shows the existing sewer district boundary as it sits today for the Nordic Valley Sewer District 1.
Okay. I'm on the right page. Okay.
Everything in blue here can gravity feed to
Yeah.
this district here, and everything down below kind of to the creek in green can potentially be served by this district as well. And so what we're trying to show here is that, reviving this district here can provide sewer for the western side of the valley over here. And the biggest piece with the sewer up here is where you're gonna store the water. And if you look up here to the north, next to Liberty Park, we've acquired a bunch of property up there in flat ground that we can create some ponds and to store a lot of the water in it there as well.
But don't you have to get permits through the state to do that?
We do.
Okay.
And so
That's good.
okay. So we are preparing a preliminary engineering report and we'll be submitting that to the state by mid-March related to this whole concept.
So what you're doing is you're gonna take out that area, you're gonna put in a plant, and you're gonna take that area up on this other piece over here and then use that as storage, winter storage.
Up here.
Yeah, up by the park.
Got it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. And then that water will be available for land application throughout the valley.
Secondary
Farmers
water.
and things like
Yeah,
that. Mhm.
And you'll have enough acreage for winter storage?
Yes.
land apply.
Well, winter.
For winter
Right.
storage, we have enough acreage for that. The land application, well, then we could go to the surrounding property.
Sure.
Around us. Mhm. So it provides some much needed water that they're looking for up there in that.
You gotta change the law so you can start using that for snowmaking.
We're working on that. We're working on it. As a.
Yeah, like, how do we? No, we don't have to do it during the session. We can cut with the rule and,
we'll work on
If you want to turn back one page previous to that, related to the water district. So we have submitted and have received at the entity creation for the water company up there from the state of Utah. And we'll submit all of our drawings to them by the end of this week for the water tank, the well, and the distribution lines and things like that are necessary. What I'm showing here is the other two property owners surrounding Nordic Valley that have expressed interest in receiving water from us. One is the church site up there, the church camp, and the other one is a subdivision to the north in that area called Harmony Ridge. We have additional water capacity and can serve more, but I didn't show that on this map here, since those are the only two adjacent property owners who have expressed interest to us today. And so that would be a district as well, or could be potentially incorporated into the Nordic Valley Sewer District and called now the Nordic Valley Water and Sewer District to manage both of these public facilities.
So Brooke, question for you. You got additional capacity possibly for water. What about sewer? Because there's been some issues, as you well know, with some ARPA fundings that we've dedicated to a particular district up there that now doesn't appear, at least somewhat hazy on whether they're going to provide sewer to what we call Newtown. There's a number of businesses along 162 that would love to have that. And I think it's better for the environment, a lot of other reasons. Is that possible to include that in your district, or you didn't have the capacity? That'd probably have to be pumped. But
it would, and that's the reason why I showed it like I did, the gravity and the pump here. Pumping technology's come a long way and is a lot easier than it used to be.
Right.
As far as inline pumps instead of wet wells and stuff like that. I won't go into all the detail there. However, the answer is yes, there is a capacity. This plant can be expanded. It's now a matter of where's the winter storage go. That's the common denominator for everything. So we know that there's been some jockeying for position as to what district is going to take what land. We tried to stay out of that. We tried to be part of it, the solution to begin with, but quite frankly, to send sewer from this part of the valley over to there and then have to take all the water back didn't make any sense.
No.
Since they didn't have any capacity on either other district that's there today to treat the water or to store it or land apply it. So now we're at their mercy to be able to move forward. We're trying to provide a plan of finance that says, here's a viable plan forward. We're committed to do this. We have the land available to do it, and it's a starting point. But without all of the money up front, you really don't get to build anything because you need all the money to even for the first toilet to flush versus the 500 toilet to flush. So that's our goal here, is to create something in a base that others can come on to if they want to in the future. And if the county has additional funds and wants to, bring on other existing developments up there in that area, that their sewers are failing or their septics are failing, or to get them offline so that the groundwater isn't polluted up there, that can be accomplished here as well.
Well, that's a huge deal. And a lot of those septics as you well know, in that section have been bad for years. I mean, I'm talking about the area up in that.
Yep.
Big Sky in that whole area. That would be a huge benefit for water quality all the way through.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong here. Thank you. Apologize. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you said if the county wanted to. That's not, Charlie, is that in the county's responsibility, or would that be in some kind of, well, I guess it'd be the health department, not the Weber County, but the health department or the different.
Primarily, yeah, with support from the county commission.
Yeah.
Obviously from the development approval side.
Great. Okay, thank you. Just wanted to be crystal
That's what I
clear
learned about that. Thank you for the clarification.
No, but someday somebody else may come back and listen to this. I just want them, this is important that we educate. So this is good.
On your winter storage, will you guys be using that at full capacity upon completion of your development project, or is there some actual wiggle room in there for other connections?
To answer that question today, with today's rules, we've planned for storing 100% of the water without using RID basins or any snowmaking.
Okay.
We know over time that can potentially be augmented by both of those disposals, which would then free up additional storage space in that area. So
Well, there you have it, in case you were wondering.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that at a minimum, we had all the land necessary to be able to store for what we're proposing to do. But there's definitely opportunity to grow that, but it is gonna require RIB, and it would require either additional land for storage or snowmaking capability. And all of the discussions we've heard is that all of those options are potentially on the table, but worst case scenario, we've got enough to store everything.
And one last question, if I might. So
Yeah, go ahead.
on your reuse water,
Yes.
sorry, I just get into the
I love it.
weeds on this, but on your reuse water, if you've got permission, is that federal water? Is it what,
It's,
because as you well know, there's some legislation that was passed last year that prohibits reuse water in a lot of cases.
yeah, I appreciate that question. This is all Weaver Basin
Okay,
water.
Great.
so we're out of the woods.
Out of boy.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah, all of the water that is non-Weaver Basin, we're storing on site and using
Okay.
for snowmaking and other things right now.
Great, okay.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
So Commission, the ask
That's a good
today
question.
for the work session is that we begin by drafting the initiating resolution for the public infrastructure district. And we would bring that to you guys in one of your commission meetings to vote on. That's where we're at in our process. And that allows them to start doing the governing document in conjunction with our Economic Development Finance Committee to get the PID going. And then we would come back at another work session and bring you the project area plan and budget for the CRA. So that would be at a separate work session.
Understand. Questions, Commissioner Farrar?
no, well, it's nice working with professionals. It's nice having the facts and the data and right in front, black and white. I like them.
Thank you. Commissioner Bolos?
No, nothing.
Great, none for me. Thank you.
I do have one. Brennan, didn't you work with a little group called Snow Basin?
Yeah,
On
that-
similar-
You know, that's how you look familiar with this.
that's right,
I see.
that's right.
You came in here and I was like, what?
I was having flashbacks there for a second.
It's been a minute on Snow Basin, but yeah, we were in front of you quite a bit back a couple of years ago.
I'll say.
So
So
back again.
they were our first PID. They went through the ringer. We put them through the ringer. And then Brennan's team, with Jay Davidson, also did the promontory PID.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
Brennan's group that's kind of what they're known
So
for.
this is your third swipe at the apple.
Third time's a charm.
Third time's a charm.
So.
Maybe we'll get it right this
That's,
time.
yeah, well, and I think the nice thing is from the Weaver County side, all I've heard is that the backbone of putting together the PID was recognized by the state as being one of the most, the best document or the most efficient or the best quality document that existed in the state. We came to the table with some really good stuff.
Yeah.
So
We got some accolades
let's
for that.
listen. Nothing happens until the ball goes in the cup. So you keep putting around there. Let's make sure this drops this time.
I agree. I
Okay.
100% agree.
Okay.
I think Snow Basin will be back around at the right time.
When that's
I
time.
think so, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to see you guys moving ahead.
Brennan and his team, our first go around with this really showed us the potential of PID, some creative things
Yeah.
that we haven't thought about before, showed us how deep the rabbit hole really goes. It was really very much appreciated.
That's
Yeah, no, Chris and Brandon have been really good to work with, and Stephanie, I mean, the whole staff, John, Scott, everyone's been just very, very good to work with, and I think we are getting more efficient at looking at these at every time, and their feedback is very valuable. I mean, from where we started with this to where we are in front of you, I think is a whole lot better. And we always think it's pretty good at the beginning, but then we get everyone's feedback and we're like, oh, wait, this is a whole lot better. So let's go make the changes. And then now we get the opportunity to come in front of you. And I think it's a much more polished and better project, and credit to Brooke and the GWC team, because I mean, they are professionals and they dot the I's and cross the T's, and it's a pleasure to work with groups like that.
Yeah. Well, you had, first group was a good group and this is a good group, so.
Yeah,
There you go.
we've been very fortunate, so.
Yeah,
All right,
I
so
like it.
we'll work on getting them on your agenda to do an initiating resolution for the public infrastructure district, and then follow up with a meeting to look at the project area plan and budget for their CRA.
Great. That's how it works. Very good. Thanks so much.
Thank you guys for
Thank
your
you.
time. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
But you have a card.
Yeah, I'll leave it with you.
And Brooke, I have 7 minutes.
Okay, great. Before the next.
7 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you.
No questions for me?
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner, good to meet you. I think this is the first time we've been in this, but we worked a lot on snow-based. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Here you go. You hold it up to your ear, you can hear the ocean.
I better not tell my daughter that.
It will take.
Oh, my God.
What's Brandon on this? To the same Brandon, I don't know a lot about it, but Brandon. Elementary school. Yeah, cool. Tell Brandon hi. He remembers me. I'm sure they don't have.
It's so fun.
Every person's name. So that's from that
graduating. The position he's in.
And some of the feedback I was getting in San Jose was, he took over my father's lead. This is.
All right, welcome back to our discussion. This is a discussion regarding the inland port project area. We'll have Miss Stephanie Russell, Brandon Quinney, Scott Park, Miss Stephanie Ebert, and Sean Wilkinson. Welcome, please come on in, folks. Miss Russell, you're up to bat.
Commissioners, next item of discussion is the inland port. And we've had some requests from a couple property owners in between when we did our last resolution and in preparation for Utah Inland Port Authority to do their presentation for their adoption of the project area. We've had two property owners make requests to add additional properties onto the project area. So we have a presentation from Brandon Quinney. He's going to start us off just to give you kind of the outline of what we're discussing today.
Mr. Quinney, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to start just by providing an outline of what we've done so far with the Inland Port Authority. Then we'll move into this new request, which is driven by property owners, not so much the Port Authority, but the owners of land. And then we can talk about some considerations for the commission in deciding whether to include that property. So here's just kind of a general outline for commissioners and for the public in general. When it comes to including land into the Utah Inland Port Authority's project area, the first bullet point here, really there's a lot of requirements, but I've summed it into three. The Weber County Commission has to give written consent to include land in the UIPA project area. That has historically come through a resolution with the commission. Any additional land that we would add from today or going forward would be an additional resolution. Landowners always have the option to exclude their land from the project area, at least before it's adopted.
And for up till, is it 45 days or 60? I can't remember. Post creation, after 60 days, they're in the project area. If they opted out.
There's a series of public hearings that the Inland Port Authority holds so that landowners have their chance to ask questions, give their input, but they do have a window to opt out. So if whatever land the commission might consent to include in the project area, landowners can always pull that eject button or push the eject button. And then additionally, some landowners have come to us now and have requested to have their land included in the project area. The resolution that the commission has passed on the action the commission has taken on the project area, this is out in the western Weber area, has said the commission consents to the Utah Inland Port Authority, including the proposed area in a project area plan. We have also included in our request to have a specialized economic development committee, which is appointed by the commission, who work closely with the Utah Inland Port Authority as they make financing decisions for the benefit of the project area. It was just a way to create this collaboration base between the county and the Port Authority. And we being the committee would provide recommendations for UIPA to follow as the area develops out. This is the area that the commission has already approved to be included in the project area. This is one of them. This is called the Little Mountain Zone. Let me make that just a little larger. Thank you. Somewhere I can zoom in a little more. Thank you, Scott. Oh, it will not let me.
Just,
all right,
just imagine it bigger.
Yeah, so here is one part of the project area that the county has consented to be included. You can see that kind of lighter boundary there. This is known as the Little Mountain Zone. The other part is called the Weber Bend Zone. It's just a little bit east. I don't know how many miles you would say east of the Little Mountain Zone, but it is along that same road, that same main road, which is 900 south.
It's about 5,900 west.
That's Black Pine, right?
Yeah.
This is the Black Pine area. So this has been already requested to be included, and then the commission is now going to take a look at a newly proposed project area, which will be this one right here. Charlie created this for us because we're going to use this tool to show just some different overlays. But in the red, this is the currently proposed project area. The blue is the newly proposed additional land that if the commission consents, could be added to the project area.
But it does not include Black Pine.
It does include.
It does include Black Pine. It's just off the map.
It's just not in, okay.
Yeah, so, just what you see in blue there is the additional land. All other boundaries are still the same as I showed in the other two maps. Here are some considerations about that area. And I'm actually going to turn some time over to staff, and some members of UIPA have come to join us to speak to these considerations, but this kind of highlights what discussion points we feel the commission might want to for making a decision to add that the blue area. First is our general need for infrastructure in the Western Weber County. Next is the Municipal Services Fund. We could talk about other funding sources for development in the area, and then how the general plan informs development out in that area. So I'm going to turn the time over to Stephanie for now to start with.
Yeah, so
infrastructure.
I'm gonna actually defer over to Scott Wolford from UIPA to talk about the overall infrastructure lift that is gonna have to happen in this area for the development, and just to talk a little bit about that and answer any questions about their process in creating a project area. If you have any questions about that.
Significant. The infrastructure need in this area is not inconsequential. It's been a concern that the bonding capacity of the area. Certainly there's a significant portion that will be undevelopable because of wetland considerations. And then we have property owners who will benefit, who in between our first presentation in January and creation at the end of March, who have asked to be included. We're excited about this as a project area. To be blunt, as we've begun recruitment for top industries through the existing port project areas, Weber County just keeps coming up, and we feel very, very comfortable in saying that with the infrastructure lift taken care of through differential, a little bit of meat still on the bone for some corporate incentives to bring in the right kind of companies that you want. We feel like there's a wonderful opportunity to kind of take care of the infrastructure and then bring in those good jobs that are going to benefit the county in one fell swoop. What am I missing? What else do I need to talk about?
Do you guys have any questions for UIPA before we address a couple other of the line items?
Sewer, power, roads, rail, all those make us nervous. None of them are cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Brewer, any questions? No? Commissioner Bolos?
No.
Scott, go ahead.
We actually can move on to the next bullet point. I think we all generally understand the need for infrastructure in that area as development comes in, as people start selling their properties. Obviously, there's a very heavy lift. When it comes to UIPA and creating a project area, there are also some considerations to municipal services and being able to provide municipal services to the area being developed. So these new areas, and I'll show you the map again. Again, it's that blue area up there. There's three of them, one here, and one here. If included into UIPA, into the project area, will affect our municipal services fund. So Scott Park is here to speak to that, and I'll turn it over to you.
Can we actually pull up the map? That's the zone,
Oh, yes, I can do that.
So, and remind me, so the yellow is residential, is that correct?
Yep, future residential
Future
areas.
residential, and then this up here really is nothing, right? Because it's wetland.
Future open space for wetland purposes.
So the concern that I have from the Municipal Services Fund, so let me just, if I can, just briefly talk about Compass Minerals, which is out there, which I'm using as kind of a model.
Yeah, before we do that, let's specify, this map is the Western Weber general plan.
Mhm.
This is not the actual zoning map, but it's what is anticipated to be in our future development plan. The current zoning for the yellow areas is,
Yeah, if you look at 8300, Brandon, will you I like
8300.
8300. It's the big dash line in the middle. Yep.
This one right here.
So everything to the west of 8300 is the M3 zone right now. Everything to the east of 8300 is either A3, A2, or A1 zone right now. So agriculture.
East.
Of 8300, yeah, everything in the red polygon. East. With a little exception around 12th Street, there's a little bit of M1 right there. But other than that, it's the ag zone.
So, and that's what kind of brought up the conversation about municipal services. Sorry, I wanted to give a little intro into how we ended up talking about that. Because this is our overlay for our West River General Plan, and it does, those A zones do allow for residential. So we have to take into consideration that type of potential zoning.
Sure, but the yellow is if everything develops as the general plan says, the yellow is what's the density in those?
It's 3 dwelling units an acre, roughly.
Yeah, so triple what the agricultural would allow right now.
Right.
So, and this isn't saying you have to do this, right? Because you guys still control the zoning, you have to change that. But okay, so going back to Compass Minerals, so Compass Minerals is out. I can't see exactly where it is on this map.
Do you want me to remove the overlay again, just to?
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so Compass Minerals up here, right there. They have a road to get them out to 12th Street, and that road was all in the Municipal Services Fund, and so they would pay to the Municipal Services Fund a year about $37,000 of property tax. Now they pay more to the general fund, to the school district, but to the unincorporated municipal services fund, they were paying about $37,000 a year. Joe's cost to maintain that road was about $30,000 a year just for that road itself, and that was just to put the asphalt down because the trucks kept tearing up the road. Didn't count any of the snow removal costs. And then just a couple of years ago, we had to redo that whole road. It was $1.5 million. So Compass Minerals I'll be dead and long gone before Compass Minerals has ever paid enough property tax to cover the cost of that road. Now, there's other benefits and other reasons to have Compass Minerals. They provide jobs. There's more than just the municipal services, but that is a consideration. And so as we look at these other areas, if the intention is to put them as residents require a higher municipal services than, say, an industrial park, which they only need its roads taken care of. But let's just, and I'm not saying you would, but let's just say you change the zones and you put apartment complexes out there. Now you've got 12, or townhomes, you've got 12 units per acre. The cost of providing municipal services is going to be far more than what we're getting back out of that, because we're giving up 75 cents on the dollar. So the only consideration I have is we need to consider what's going to go into those areas and whether or not we're going to be having to raise taxes on other unincorporated areas of the county to subsidize that, because we've already promised 75 cents on the dollar of every new property tax dollar, and also 75 cents on the dollar of every new sales tax dollar that we collect out there to UFO. So, I look at this and say, if it's just going to be residential, do we even need to do this now? Could we just say, hey, look, let's wait and see how this develops, because none of our developments are 5 years after the fact look like what they were 5 years ago. We've got examples of the 2 ski resorts, and neither one of them look like what they thought they would be. So I would say, I guess there's more risk than reward at this time for including those areas, in my opinion, just because we don't know what's going to go out there. And if it's going to be residents, we're not going to be able to pay for it without having to generate taxes some other place. Now, I'm hoping the projections for all these areas are good, that the 25 cents on the dollar is enough to cover all the municipal services that are needed for there. I mean, it's a projection. We don't know what's going to happen, but I'm hoping that's the case. But I just, unless this is going to significantly alter the amount of tax or amount of bonds that you can issue, or significantly allow you to put in more infrastructure, I just don't see the reward for it right now for including them in there.
Ready?
Yeah.
And that's the question, right? So to talk about residential, which is not our bailiwick. That's not where we want to be in.
Right.
However, the infrastructure need is going to transcend zones. Right now it's agriculture. If we're going to put a sewer in, 14,000 home units are going to impact that pretty significantly. And to be able to capture that increment to help pay for sewer, power, et cetera, all the things that everyone's going to need might be a big deal. Now, we just don't know at this point. And I think we're agreed on that. My recommendation would be to do this As you rezone, if it doesn't make sense, pass a resolution at the same time you do the zoning to say Inland Port Authority Board, please remove this from the project area. Our board will take it right now. I'm more worried honestly about commercial than I am residential. Taking sales tax maybe is an unfortunate byproduct of our statute. Our intention is not to be in commercial areas. Please don't put a Costco in a project area. If Costco is going to go somewhere there, again, same thing. Pass a resolution at the same time that you rezone and do your permits. Port Authority Board, please take this out of the project area. It'll be greenfield. It won't affect the bonding. We'll just take it right out. The committee that you have established, at least conceptually, I think is going to be the strength of this project area, where we don't have to get it right today. We're just taking our best guess. We will adjust through the 25 years, which we're thrilled about. This is the right way to do it.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead,
So,
Mr. Floor.
2 questions, actually.
Yes,
So
sir.
how much dirt are we talking about in those blue areas? How much acreage?
I'm going to defer. I don't know that off the top of my head. I'm sorry. Sorry to say.
I'll do a calculation real quick.
So,
It's a lot of water up there.
so you got wetlands on that side, and I guess I've got 3 questions. Why would you want wetlands in that area?
For overflows, yeah.
We're already taking substantial amount of heat that, on this, I think all 3 of us have, as far as dedicating, putting commercial areas on wetlands and.
So we don't want to put commercial areas on wetlands, but one of the benefits of having into the project area is that you can use that differential to do things like remediate, buffer, protect, environmental easements. And if that's interesting to you, I think it's a wonderful use of project area differential. You are in the zone where you're required to spend at least 1% of the differential to wetland preservation.
Right.
You're not going to struggle to hit that number. It's going to be significantly more than that.
So I guess my main question is, if I could,
Yes, sir.
is I'm a little concerned about adding more acreage to the Port Authority when we haven't, I'd always like to see results before I see the list. I always like to sell the first lot before I start thinking about selling the 40th lot. So far I haven't, and maybe you can inform me, what's our progress so far?
Well, so we don't have a project area yet, so we can't do anything until we create.
Why don't we have hasn't the board approved it?
They've heard it once in January. They took a month off for the legislative session. They'll create at the end of March.
Well,
So these additional areas were not Port Authority board requests. These are property owners in Weaver County that wanted to be included.
well, and I understand that. I guess I'm afraid we're putting the cart before the horse on this, in my opinion. So
We don't have a cart yet. Right now, we're still just dating, but at the end of March.
But I
that's
guess
when
I'd
it
like
gets
to get
created.
the first date over with before we start talking about the second date. Is what I'm telling you.
I think.
The first date hasn't gone well so far, in my opinion.
In my memory, I think in fairness for you, Scott, I do remember when you came and made the presentation to the commission, you talked about timing and you talked about this going through in the March meeting. There would be a March meeting.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So maybe this meeting may be just a little early.
The one we are in right now,
Right this minute.
perhaps. Yeah, because they haven't made a final decision on the red polygon.
Right.
So maybe we wait till a little bit later to talk about the blue.
I think we're all kind of feeling that way, and if maybe we had this meeting again in April.
So we're going to create in March. To create after the fact requires amendments, so we'll kind of start over with another resolution and another 2-meeting cycle. Now, the base tax year is still fixed, so it'll be 2023 when we create in March. We're just making sure to get the boundaries right to what Weber County wants as closely as possible.
Making this change will require a resolution anyway, right?
Will require a resolution, but we have our first presentation done, and I'll be blunt. We got a lot of communities stacked up for project areas. We've kind of held Weber County's spot. We thought this was going to be created November, December. We got to January, March. Kicking it down the road. Now this doesn't necessarily, again, we can create on the red boundary. It's just fine. But then to amend the blue portions in would require the same process in its entirety to start over.
You're saying it's easier to take them out than to put them in.
So much easier.
Is that a codified process to remove
Or is?
It's not, it's at the discretion of the board. But it doesn't have statutory requirements to exclude, other than property.
So if we were to put these in now and then to,
Take them out, it's easy.
take them out, it's easy.
Yes, sir.
The county doesn't control that process,
The
right?
county does not
We're
control that
at-
process.
I mean, we like the board now, right? You're good to work with, but let's just say
Right.
in 4 years or from now, it's not a good board to work with. It's
Understandable.
hostile toward the county. We could say, okay, we're ready. Would you please pull out this? We want Costco to go here. Please pull this area out.
And
And
they
they could
say
say, you know
no.
what? No, thank you. We're gonna keep it as is.
That's right.
So I mean, I guess it may be easier to pull it out with
Double-edged sword.
an amenable board.
I think it's easier not to do
Yeah.
it the first time than try to pull it out. I mean,
It might be a longer process, but it gives us more control over that.
we have more control, yeah. Well, we don't have, once we give it to the port, we have really zero control, because as Scott said, they can say, no, we're not de-annexing or,
Right.
so.
But does this significantly affect, if, without these blue areas, does it significantly affect the amount of infrastructure you can bond or the amount of bonds you can issue to get infrastructure?
So we haven't projected in these what that changes the bond to. We also don't have estimates for what your infrastructure needs are. So am I nervous about that? Absolutely, I am.
At this point, it's a policy decision, so there's risk either way, right? There's risk that we include these areas in and now we don't have enough money in the municipal services fund to provide those services. There's also risk that nothing will ever happen out there because there's no infrastructure dollars, because they're not in the project area. So I think at this point, really, it's kind of just a policy. What's the best way to move forward? I think in the end, we both want the same thing.
Correct. I don't think we're gonna leave here enemies regardless which way the commission goes. I would say that on the previous boundaries, we're projecting $120 million that's gonna be part of that 25%. Your taxable revenues, so what you're providing county resources for now, are $190,000 per year. So your revenue is really going to explode. The question is, what's the lift? And we just don't know. What do we need for SR 39 that's going to be county responsibility? Significant. What are we looking at for bridges for rail? Significant. What are we looking at for sewer, power, water? Significant. We're showing, again, prior to the projection is 360.8 million that's going to be able to be dedicated for infrastructure in the project area. And that feels like a lot, but it keeps me awake at night thinking what those needs are going to be.
Will the port fill potholes?
The port will not fill potholes.
And that's my concern, is that if we have a big heavy trucks driving over those roads that are tearing up those roads, trying to get to a main thoroughfare, we have to maintain it.
You are going to have big trucks that are going to tear those up, but unless you don't build out your area.
Well, maybe this is a good time for some of the other considerations that would factor into this. One being that there are other funding sources for development in this area. The county has tools for an area outside of UWIPA's boundaries. We still have our CRAs where we can negotiate different amounts with landowners and Weber County's own community reinvestment agency. There are PIDs that can be established out there where the infrastructure lift, at least the financing lift, can be placed upon the future landowners that would live in that area. So some of these other areas out here, like these blue areas, for instance, if it isn't included in the Inland Port Authority's project area, then the county can look at other ways to try and finance this huge infrastructure lift. There is also possible legislation for infrastructure financing districts, which we don't know a lot, about, at least not. It's
still
approved today.
Stephanie
Stephanie
still
so that's another option. But they're all different financing mechanisms where it's not necessarily that infrastructure will never happen if UIP was not there to help it. It's just that this is one tool that the county can hand over to a state agency. And if the county chooses not to, there are other tools still available.
I want to make sure we're very clear that should you exclude those, you can't use project area funds for the infrastructure right in. You can't build roads in those excluded areas with the differential there. And when we look at those other options, The inland port statute is pretty clean and it's pretty quick, and you get to speak on behalf of the taxing entities without negotiating with the school district and mosquito abatement and all the other folks, your special services 911 district, etc. If you go down a different road, those avenues wouldn't be available to you unless, again, we added them in later.
I think we ought to throw that map up again. And I get that, but as I look at that map, I look at those two little isolated pieces. To me, it makes more sense if you're gonna have a district that you should include, you know, expand your red area up to. Get up there. You know what I'm saying? Why not have all of this and square this up instead of? And these are owner requests.
Mhm.
You know, what about these other owners that? To me, this is not a clean map.
We put it out and said,
Especially from an infrastructure standpoint,
Right.
let's say we're gonna do the road out there, 900 south. So you're gonna have that, you've got these, you're gonna do this, cause it adjoins it. This one doesn't qualify because you don't adjoin.
sure.
So what are we buying for our, you know, for our F-150?
Fair question.
Can you use port dollars outside of the?
It has to have a nexus to the project
So
area.
12th Street or 900 South?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, 12th Street's funny, right? Because it's a state road, but we've got a good relationship with UDOT and they've never turned down money from us before.
But it's not state there.
Correct, right. Not yet.
In the future.
Not yet. I would hope that you've got more power than I do to get it state.
Well, I'll tell you, as a West Point resident, that West Davis corridor has made my life 11% better.
Oh,
It's just fantastic.
How do you calculate that?
Oh, just
11%.
happiness not driving on I-15.
I
Randy,
think we turn that over to the state today.
Do you want to do general plan?
you turn that overlay back on, I just want to make sure they're, looking at it from a specific angle as well. So the pink area that buffers both sides of 8300 West, that's intended to be regional commercial. That is where Costco will go.
Mhm.
On 8300. The kind of different color pink that is right at, right there, that is intended to be vehicle oriented commercial. So we might see some gas stations, some other kind of retail there.
Those change.
Yep. The yellow areas, if we rezone, so again, this is what I just mentioned is if we rezone it to the intended zones from the general plan. If we rezone those yellow areas and the kind of orangish areas that buffer the pink areas, those are intended to be 3 dwelling units per acre. In those areas, they're only gonna be 3 dwelling units per acre if the landowner or the developer installs the infrastructure that we're asking for. So I don't know that we necessarily need port money for that infrastructure, but we definitely need it for the manufacturing area and maybe even the commercial area if we can swallow the retail tax side of things. So commissioners, you still have an element of control here where all of that yellow area is currently in the A3 zone, which requires, I said 1 dwelling unit per 1 acre. It's actually 1 dwelling unit per 2 acres for most of that yellow area. And so until it gets rezoned to something higher density, number one, the cost to provide road services, just road services alone to more spread out rural lots skyrockets on a lot by lot basis if they're spread out further apart. So what that means is the landowner will have a lot of incentive to try and rezone to the more dense zone, and the county will probably have some incentive to rezone to the more dense zone if we're comfortable with that kind of density. If it is part of the port, we would probably want to hold off on rezoning if we are concerned about those areas being residential in the future. Until the landowner has worked with the Port Authority, until the county has worked with the Port Authority to remove those parcels. And so you still have some element of control that way. What this does is it kind of says, if you use your rezone authority to not rezone those yellow parcels to higher density until something happens, that control, contrast that with the Port Authority having the control over using the tax dollars that are in there, while if it does develop out, essentially. So, sorry, rambling a little bit. To sum up, you lose a little bit of control on whether or not it is in the Port Authority, and you're at the behest of the Port Authority to relinquish control over those properties from a property tax collection perspective. But you still have control over whether or not you give them the higher density. So we may not realize the future of yellows and magentas on the map if you guys choose to maintain control over that through zoning. Does that make sense to explain that more? So don't give them the new zone if you're worried about it.
I can't imagine a scenario where it's greenfield, right? And so if the interest of the Port Authority not to relinquish the property that's not going to develop if you don't approve the permits, I still think you hold the cards, the important ones.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
The base tax rate doesn't change. You still get all of that. So it wouldn't be a matter of, well, it would have to be just the most nasty, vindictive, horrible thing. I'm thinking of the worst legislative minds of the, that's right. And I can't find a motivation to say.
Be careful, there's a few down there.
We
Careful what you're saying.
we don't wanna, we have the ability to trigger by parcel, if that's how we want to do it, right? And so the 25 years won't start until development occurs parcel by parcel by parcel. So I can't reconcile why wouldn't we just give it back to you if you're gonna put apartments or a Costco there? Because if we don't give it back to you, you're not gonna put apartments or a Costco there.
Approve the zone, hopefully, we just have to make sure that stays in our institutional memory. Don't approve the zone unless you know for sure how you're gonna fund it.
But I am glad to hear there's gonna be a Costco there. Nice job, Commissioner.
And Commissioners, that may be a
Might be a
sufficient
while.
mitigating factor, just to say, look, as long as we have it in the institutional memory, that whenever there's a proposed rezone, that we look at that, what are the costs going to be to service that area, not just from putting in infrastructure, but to maintain the infrastructure going on time. You know, that may be the best way to do it. I mean, so we can.
And I would propose that we codify that in the charter of the advisory committee, that there are steps to be taken as rezones occur inside or adjacent to the project area.
I'm not too worried about the yellow areas being inside, because those specific areas, we painted the map with a broad brush. We just had land that we weren't quite sure what to do with. Originally, we were gonna say, just leave it all ag. But then the landowner asked that we consider turning it to residential. We're so focused on other areas with other property owners right now that I can't tell you for sure what the right thing to do with the property is, whether it be yellow or green or.
No.
It's a ways out.
Do you see it being anything other than residential? I mean, I know you can add additional densities, but do you ever see that turning into a commercial purpose?
It's totally up to the commission, after planning commission here.
It's a brand new plan, and so I don't anticipate it changing anytime soon.
We've got 2 developers looking to make some big changes here within the next half year.
Okay.
And again, it's because we did broad brush, but we didn't do it on a parcel by parcel, owner by owner basis. We didn't know what everybody's master plan was for their own properties.
Yeah.
And it's a living document, so the intention is for it to be changed as circumstances change.
Do you require the general plan to change before you rezone?
If it's to a zone that the general plan already anticipates, then no. But if it's to a zone that a general plan doesn't anticipate,
You do.
then yes.
Got it. So you've got some steps there for public input and discussion. It won't be a lightning fast process.
My only comment would be that regardless of intent of the board, the authority is not there in statute to protect you. And so the discretion is with the board and not the commission. And the other way around, if you just don't put it in, then you just go through some extra processes to some extra hearings, wait your turn in order to get it in there.
Honestly, if the commissioners are alarmed at how to grow the boundary today, then there ought to be some checklist or methodology that as growth occurs in the boundary of the inland port, which it probably will change over the next year or two. How do you find a comfortable way to accept petitions and make it more clear that it's either yes or no? Because right now it seems blurry to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem that you've got today is 6 months ago or a year ago, you didn't have a boundary. And as you've come periodically, the boundaries kind of evolve for different reasons, and that reason has not been consistent. We did this, we did that, we did this, until you got another request with a different, but there ought to be just a generalized, Yeah, it makes sense. Boundary is going to evolve and grow. We expect that. And you should have that comfort instead of that blurry fog that you're seeing right now is with input from the room and your input. There ought to be a more easier way to evolve the boundary over time. And if people need to get out or get in, what's the most efficient way to let that boundary change? And I don't see it yet. And that's why I think where you're got this discomfort today is, what are the checks that you just want to go through and say, okay, this makes sense.
Right.
It's easy.
Fascinating.
I know. And today should be a slam dunk meeting. Done. 5 minutes, but it's not.
Okay. Well,
what are the checklists that you have to go through?
I think that's where we are.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to endorse, I'm not saying I'd be opposed to it, but it has to make a little more sense.
I think, Scott, I need a little more.
And right now, it's not making 100% of sense.
I just don't know. You're just, sorry. Sharon?
But John, you make a great point. I think it would be easier for us to have sort of a checklist that,
I agree with that.
you know, that as these different parcels come in, it's clear to us whether we want it or not.
Yeah.
Versus scratching our head and thinking, is it better to, you know, kick them out or bring them in? Like, it just, there needs to be a process that is easy for us to.
Like I
go
said, Commissioner,
through.
we're not leaving enemies. It's your
No,
call.
not at all.
You're
Thank you for coming here.
No.
If anything else, what it's done is driven some more thought on how we do this. If with our Inland Port Authority Board, we just, in here, we just start.
Create an internal.
Create an internal, that's
Yeah.
where I wanna go. That's for me, I wanna go. You good with that? You
Yeah,
good with that?
the suggestion that we may want to think about is, this is really a land use issue. I wouldn't be opposed to, you know, turning this over to our Western Weaver Planning Commission and say, look, you know, and I've already had some pushback from a number of people that, hey, they weren't involved with this process directly when we did this inland port. I'd like to hear from the public and hear from our planning commissioners what they, you know, they've got boots on the ground out there. What do they suggest?
There you go.
So,
Well, now, that's pretty good.
you know what I'm thinking?
Uh-huh.
Let
Well,
the-
not exactly,
No.
but yeah.
But let the planning commission weigh in on.
I know what you're
That's
saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, not thinking, but saying.
Yeah.
I do know what you're saying. Thinking?
That's tough.
One of the thought is, as the discussion's been had, if we can get this done by, and I'm still fuzzy on what that by
Yeah.
is. And you've mentioned dates, and if we can get this resolved before it goes to the March meeting, or maybe that March meeting is delayed till April.
Don't float that. Our year is done.
Well, again,
If we delay March for 2025.
I'm trying to hit pressure points, and apparently I just hit one, which is
Yeah,
good.
that's
We
right.
didn't know where that pressure point is, but we're not familiar with the pressure points.
Okay.
But I'm asking if you can define a point in time, a date that says, if the planning commission met, if you guys got feedback as a commission, as the input was, how do we find that checklist? Is it the planning commission that really makes the recommendation? If you want to go down that road, what's the timeline that says, if we had this done by, then we wouldn't have to amend and go through the headache and on.
What is that date?
What is the date?
So the board meeting is on the 26th of March. We have to post 10 business days before then.
16th.
And then we need time to redo our environmental and our legal descriptions before that.
Hello.
So our goal was to have this wrapped up, boundaries settled by the 29th of February to give our staff enough time.
That's maybe this week, isn't it?
That's this week, yes, sir.
So does that, preparing a checklist, getting comfortable with it by, is that Thursday?
It's Thursday.
I don't see the planning
Is
commission.
that a comfortable
getting this anything by
timeline
then.
for you? And do you want to live with the consequences of not hitting that timeline of this week? I guess that's really the question I'm gonna drive to is a delay. But if it is this week, can you arrive at that point by this week?
Well, I think we're now where we're gonna be.
Yeah.
The commission has already passed a resolution consenting to the red boundary.
Right.
So.
And that has been presented to the board authority in January.
Yeah, and
This just has to-
which will be,
So if we don't do anything else,
it'll be that one for March.
what-
and if you're still comfortable, we will create the red boundary and the black pine.
Yeah.
Elements. There might have been, was black pine a little bit messy on one side?
No.
No,
It-
we
there was just a
resolved that.
road going. through.
Okay.
That's the only
Yeah,
thing
no,
that's
we
it.
resolved
Where,
that.
did we?
Yeah, because there was some parcel numbers that
Right.
had changed, we fixed that.
Okay.
I think for me, commissioners, if I were gonna err on the side of error, I'd be those two blue squares. That's close to 900.
Yeah.
But the other part, no.
That concerns me.
I think we're gonna come back and do that again, but if we do, then we're gonna come back and do it again.
Mhm.
I would like just to bring up, and this is, please don't take this as pushback. Bless your planning commissioners' hearts, and I say this as a planning commissioner for my own little community in West Point. There is no land use authority element of this project area. And so sometimes it puts them in a little bit of a weird spot because they're not sure what they're evaluating. And we've met with planning commissions for other municipalities, and we'd be happy and come out and chat with them. And it kind of resolves to the same spot. Now, what do we do with this? Well, nothing until there's a request or plat to approve or a rezone or those elements that are just normal. Being in or out of a project area only affects the financial side and not that land use authority at all. But again, we're happy to come out and chat with them.
I get
Okay.
that. I get that.
Yeah, and what I would suggest regarding the plan commission is that we integrate them into, as we get requests for to be included or if to change the boundaries, that we integrate them into that process along with our economic development.
Agreed.
Finance Committee. And we would
That
have,
makes sense.
we would
Agreed.
have that as an internal, and that way we'd be able to come in and provide you guys with a checkbox of, well, this is why we are recommending these properties. are
There you
coming
go.
into the area.
There you go.
That's what I'm looking for.
Is involving the planning commission intended to make sure there's that public process, or is it to get a specific vote from the planning commission?
Probably the first.
It could be a vote, because there's nothing to vote on.
Yeah,
Right.
it just, I just want their general opinion.
Yeah, they're.
Okay, what's the future of that site?
Future land use, yes, sir.
8,300,
Yeah.
8,300 to, 6,700. What's the line getting there?
And it helps,
I mean, I can't believe that's gonna be all residential.
yeah, and it helps to make assumptions, financial
Yeah.
assumptions.
Okay, you said it.
That's where I'm at.
Brandon, you can go ahead and go.
Right behind you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks,
Always
Scott.
good to have you with
Oh,
us.
such a pleasure.
If there's no other questions,
I don't believe I have any. And
Oh.
let me, maybe just one.
okay, fine.
My assumption is we are going to move forward with project area creation on the existing boundaries as they are in the blended budget today.
You've articulated that well.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And we will consider amending following the creation of our advisory committee, which is gonna have a super cool name.
Yeah, good. Like super cool.
And we look forward to that.
SCN, little SCN right there.
Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Kennan.
Commissioner.
Thanks,
I'll
Scott.
entertain a
Is there-
motion for
Motion to
adjournment.
adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Okay, then.